My first question, do you have any do's or don'ts when it comes to Scicomm?
Think the biggest do is just answer questions that you think, like make the content that you think is missing or that you would like to see. Yeah, if you want something, then chances are other people also want that thing. And if it doesn't exist, then yeah, there's going to be people wanting it.
Do you have any don'ts? So, say someone's in Scicomm. Are there any like
Hmm.
cardinal rules? Don't do this. And that you can think of. I could think of a few, but what do you think?
The biggest don't is probably don't say things before you check it. Or like be very honest about what you do and don't know. It's always like if you think back to school, there was always like a teacher who would tell you an answer and then the next day you find out, oh, they told you completely the wrong thing and you just kind of resent them. So I think no one hates you if you like no one's going to come away with the wrong information and no one's going to be upset if you just say I'm not sure about this, but I'll check it. Like be upfront, be honest about what you do and don't know, and yeah, be happy to follow up.
Again, if anyone in the room has any questions for Michelle, oh, I see a few questions might have come up in the chat room. Okay, so this next question is from Julia Ruby. Their first question was, how do you decide what information to omit when answering questions?
That's a good question, and it's actually a really difficult thing to do. So yeah, my background before this year, I was actually the head of science at a tutoring college, like one of the biggest ones in Sydney, in Australia, actually. I think we might actually be the biggest one in Australia. So we had like 2,000 students, and I was in charge of writing the textbook that all the teachers had to teach of. So there were like about 100 classes that would have to go through this textbook. And the problem is we only had 3 hours per lesson. So there was a lot of like chopping and changing and trying to work out what was too much and what was too little. And like you kind of had to write the textbook in a way that would mean that students came away with a good understanding, but they didn't try to like take the teacher too far down a garden path and get too distracted because, yeah, we had limited time. So I think those sorts of principles also apply for science communication. Like you want to answer the question well, but you don't want to give people too much irrelevant information because then it doesn't really help. It can lead to confusion. It can lead to questions that aren't that important. So I think a lot of it is after you've made the content, you have to read through it and think, are there any obvious questions that would come up if I included this information? Is this relevant? Like, should I be using it in like a follow-up post? So I think, does that answer the question? Yeah.
Well, in this kind of goes into the topic of nuance. Like as
Hmm.
a scientist or science communicator, you want to give the nuance to an answer, but how much is too much? Uh, and also, algorithms don't favor nuance. So if you're trying
Yeah.
to get a certain message out there, at what point do we just have to, I guess, not give as nuanced as an answer as perhaps we would prefer to?
I think it's always okay to like suggest nuance, but not go down that path. Because I mean, if it is like something that's quite central, like quite important to answering the question, I think it's like probably fine for a follow-up post. And it's not too bad to like leave a little bit of a question at the end because then people will be interested and want a follow-up post. So yeah, I think it's always good to hint at levels of uncertainty because I think a lot of the time in science communication, things are communicated without nuance, very much black and white. And that's just not the reality of things. And if, as science communicators, we keep on showing things as black and white, then it actually creates an unreasonable expectation as well. And I think that's one of the issues that's happened with how coronavirus has been tackled in science communication. I guess it's not a problem with how coronavirus has been communicated, but with like things leading up to that. So people were so used to science as being unshakable fact. And then with something like COVID, where all eyes are on this very new emerging research, everyone realized that, hang on, science doesn't know things and we find out new things and we like things change with shifting evidence. And I think that actually led to a lot of problems because people weren't used to this. And now that it really mattered, everyone was like, but you said masks weren't okay, but you said immunity only lasts 6 months and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we can definitely see some of the issues when there's not enough nuance and people aren't used to the nuance required in science.
Yeah, I guess to further this, a challenge that I struggle with is unnuanced titles that you'll often see in the media. Kind of, if it bleeds, it leads. That's
Mm.
the common catchphrase for journalists. It really works. So people share information that's misinformation that spreads like wildfire. They think of it the day of and just put it up. But then should science communicators take a similar tactic for the posts that they share? We had a bit of a conversation about this on my last panel. I'm not sure I agreed with my panelists who disagreed with using kind of bolder headlines that are correct, but perhaps just a bit bolder just to catch attention. But what do you think?
I think there's a time and place for it. I think there's definitely a place for it. And sometimes I think that I personally tend to go towards more nuance, and I think that sometimes backfires. Like I regret being too nuanced. So for example, I wrote one which was like, so my clean beauty video, for example, it started off as clean beauty is wrong. Actually, I think it was like clean beauty is bullshit and won't give us safer products. Then I was like, maybe that's a bit mean. I'll go to clean beauty is wrong and won't give us safer products. And that was what I ended up publishing. And then clean beauty brands kept approaching me for sponsorships. And so I was like, wow, maybe I wasn't clear enough. So now I've changed it to clean beauty is a scam and won't give us safer products. So I actually kind of regret that because I think it did give people the wrong impression. It was like, oh, we can just fix what we were wrong about. But like, it's like, no, it's fundamentally, it like your entire worldview according to clean beauty is wrong. So I think, yeah, it can go either way. I think, yeah, sometimes you do have to be really upfront. Um, and it depends on the level of evidence. So if people say cancer cure found in Amazon rainforest, I think that's usually the example of where like poor poor title choice misleads people. Like it turns people into thinking, if we found all these cancer cures, but I don't see like there's still cancer, big pharma must be suppressing information when in fact like in that case the title should have been potential cure or something, potential cancer treatment. Yes, I think it really depends on the situation, how much evidence you have, how bad something is, and yeah, it's a really difficult judgment call.
Just along the lines of clean beauty, you probably remember my post talking about clean beauty and conspiracy theory, and I perhaps
Mm,
drew a I guess association maybe with the QAnon, which I totally
yeah.
stand by that statement.
Yeah.
Should Scicommers put out that kind of information? Is that like too negative? Is that doing more harm than good? Is like how do we approach such damaging misinformation to try to like correct the marketplace or compel brands to do better?
I think whenever you have something that's a little bit controversial like that, I think as long as you have, like, the more numbers and data you have to back it up, the better. Because I think people tend to not, like,
Read.
yeah, that. Yeah, people, I think, jump to conclusions when you put out something that's a little bit more, I guess, more direct, more like, I guess, edgy. People tend to just, not, yeah, not read. They just tend to think you're saying something that you're not saying. Um, so I didn't have a problem with your post at all. I think it was because, yeah, I think a lot of people aren't aware that there are so many people who have been sucked into this conspiracy theory who are very, like, it's not just people, it's not just Trump supporters. So I have a few acquaintances who live in Bali in part of those what are they called? Digital nomad communities where they sell, I don't know, life improvement, like life coaching courses and stuff while on very little income. And they're people who are really hippies. Like they do tons of drugs. They're all about free love, and they are heavily into QAnon because this sort of like we think of it as sort of like this hippie stuff is sort of left wing pseudoscience, but it's still the same style of conspiratorial thinking. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what you could have done differently, honestly. I don't think there are that many statistics on this specific thing. I might be wrong. But because it's a relatively new area, I'm assuming there's not much research published on it and everyone was focusing on COVID.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. There's some interesting research around conspiracy thinking, but I'm not sure if there's really any solid numbers. Something that I
Mm,
I read though recently that it made me think about my approach for science
mm,
communication, and kind of just along these lines of putting a bold headline and then expecting people after the headline to read the nuance. So I read that I think it's something like 70% of the population, like at large around the world, it's a very high number, have the reading literacy of a grade schooler below grade 7. Something in
wow.
that ballpark. So
Yeah.
so like there's such widespread reading literacy or deficiency.
Mm,
So how can we best communicate when like the best way to
mm,
communicate to people who don't have good reading literacy is in like a small of words, maybe using pictures more or diagrams
yeah.
or
Mm,
videos. What do you think?
yeah. I think yeah, I've definitely found that using a variety of media definitely helps. So one of the reasons I started doing YouTube videos, I think I started in 2017. I've been blogging since 2011. It was actually I was frustrated about the limits of text. That was probably the main thing. Like my first video was about alpha hydroxy acids and the effect of pH, and I found that I couldn't explain that in words or in still images. Like I needed an animation. I felt like it was not quite happening there. So again, I guess this is again back to like the way I was writing the textbooks and lesson plans. We would insert videos in because sometimes it's really hard to explain something with just like a teacher moving their hands around. Having something like a video really helps. So yeah, mixed media I think is a big thing. A lot of the time, analogies are really good, but yeah, it would require people to read past the first line. I think sometimes it's just like workshopping, like agonizing over single words. So again, like the clean beauty example, like changing that word, change the message. And I didn't think it was like, I mean, it was just like different grades of like wrong that I was looking for. And sometimes you just have to like, I don't know, take a long shower and try to work out what the right word is for like that one word in your title.
We had another question from Julia, and the question is, do you do any research on common misconceptions when working on a post? I know I certainly do.
Mm. To be honest, I think because I've been doing beauty stuff for so long, I feel like I've come across a lot of misconceptions, but I definitely, actually, last night I did a video, which hopefully will come out on Saturday, about the inky list succinic acid, and I watched like every single YouTube video that anyone. Well, I mean, not every single video, but like every single YouTube video that had over 1,000 views about succinic acid. Um, yeah, so I do a lot of background. I do a lot of research. It's not simply on like peer-reviewed articles and studies and stuff. I do actually read a lot of reviews and see what people are saying. Yeah, so the thing I was trying to see in with my watching every single video was how people were putting, how people were communicating what they understood from Inky List marketing. So yeah, like the research that goes into each post isn't just science. It is a lot of like trying to work out I guess a lot of it, something that I think is really underrated, when we talk about how to communicate science well, is empathy. Like you kind of have to like go in the trenches and see what the what people are assuming and why they think that. So I think with a lot of beauty myths, I kind of try to work out the reasons people believe that myth. And that goes a long way towards debunking the myth as well, because you want to get to the root of why they think something. Because if you don't address that, then like a new myth will just come up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess my strategy for my headlines a lot of the time, it's often like a quick, like I'm trying to address the point specifically, and it might feel wrong depending on your ideology. And a lot of the times then I get all these like negative comments underneath the posts. But I feel like if you just keep going, keep posting things like this. At least this has been my experience with feedback that I've
Mm,
gotten. Then it's like planting a seed and then
mm.
eventually people come around. What do you think?
I think it definitely helps. So I think another thing that I think is also not really appreciated in science communication is that you do need a bunch of different approaches. Like people who resonate with my content might not resonate with yours. People who resonate with your content might not resonate with mine. Like some people want that sort of like more direct, critical, slightly antagonistic approach that you take. Like you're not that antagonistic. Like if people have seen Lee Pampered Pig,
Oh.
that's just like and that works for some people, and that's like I mean I feel like a lot of it is kind of venting, like you kind of have to vent about how much BS you see in the beauty industry, and like it's like therapeutic to see someone be so angry because you're like, oh good, I'm not alone. But then some people like softer approaches, like kind of what I do, and then you have even softer ones like there's another Australian science influencer who thinks I'm really mean.
What?
Right. Yeah, I'm like, I'm not that mean.
uh,
I feel like I'm being quite nice and like, like trying to hold people's hands, but she holds people's hands even more. And I think she's also a bit into like astrology and stuff. Anyway, so I guess she has a bit more empathy for that position. But yeah, like I don't think there's anything wrong with having more than one approach. Like I don't think mine is like better than yours, Gems, for example. I think both of our approaches are necessary because like different people prefer different communication styles. They prefer different ways of like showing the content and stuff like that.
and like just something that I've noticed with, I guess it's probably the social media algorithm that kind of favors negative information. When I post
Mm,
just like just like you could look at, like I had like an inky post, just a
mm,
description, not that, I guess, bold, just plain information. It hardly, and then I also spent a really long time researching it and putting it together. Gets
yeah.
very little traction, and then I put something a little bit bolder, a little bit more negative. That's what works
Mm,
for the algorithms, because like we have this like negativity bias. So I
mm.
think that's like part
People
of,
like drama.
yeah, I feel like that's part of good. This is just my perception, and I know
Mm,
a lot of people disagree. Like, for example, the last e-panel that I did, I'm pretty sure most of the panelists disagreed with this. But I feel like you have to be aware of like these like cognitive like things that we'd have, like this negativity bias, and also be
mm.
aware of the algorithms. And then
Yes.
also like where you may be able to post something that is a little bit more nuanced in your title, you'll reach more people because you have a much larger platform, where someone with a
Mm,
smaller platform might have to, if they want to get the content out, maybe take a different strategy. I guess it's kind of
mm.
still speaking to there's many different strategies, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think there is a really big underappreciation of things like social media algorithms, Google's algorithm, and stuff like that in science communication. Obviously, I'm not super familiar with all of the science communication field and what everyone is talking about, but yeah, a lot of it is based on how people perceive like single sentences and how people read an article. And like, if we, at the end of the day, the best thing, like the ideal science communication is just the people read the peer-reviewed article and they understand all of it. Like that is like the purest form of science communication, but that is just completely unrealistic. And I think, yeah, a lot of science communicators I found just don't really do the research into, yeah, like how the Instagram algorithm works, how SEO works. But the thing is, pseudoscience people do, they know this really well. A lot of them are like bloggers, and bloggers have lots of, there's lots of like courses and stuff for to help bloggers like get a larger reach. But I don't think science communicators really utilize that effectively. I think a lot of the younger ones do, but a lot of the older ones, like, um, they just don't really do that sort of less academic sort of reading. Um, which, like, I feel like maybe there's always been a sort of thing where when you go into that sort of research, which is a lot less rigorous, it's a lot less like scientific, um, people just kind of look down on that a bit. And I think that's just completely wrong because that's what pseudoscientists are utilizing. And if you're like not using the same tools as them, if you're forcing yourself to be a purist and not utilize any of these tricks, then they're going to win. They have a better like lay of the land. It doesn't matter how like noble your info is. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, like I often wonder if like part of the reason why we're like there's so many different things going on obviously and it's
Mm,
like yeah, but I wonder if part of the reason why we've been so ineffective at getting correct information out there is because especially some of the people that are maybe like older and didn't grow up with the internet or social media, that's their vantage, and so maybe we can be more effective by using those other tools. Yeah, that's just yeah, my own ponderings. If it's like a
yeah, I
generational
agree.
thing.
I think yeah. Yeah, it's been, but at the same time, I think it's always been a bit of an issue. Like, even before social media was a big thing, back when it was just blogs, a lot of science blogs just didn't get much traction because, um, yeah, they were like accurately but poorly named and things like that. So yeah, when I chose my blog title, which I still now kind of regret, um, the things I was looking for was mostly SEO searchability. That was the main thing. Like I ended up with a very searchable thing without a very good backstory, but it's very searchable. Um, whereas something like science-based medicine, for example, amazing blog, so in depth, but their target audience is like, I don't know, the top 2% of science nerds. Like you have to be a massive nerd to read it, and you have to be like they had to do a lot of work to find it because science-based medicine, that is not a very searchable title because everyone has the word science out there. Everyone has the word medicine out there, like next to each other. It's just not going to show up easily on Google search results.
And then something else that came up on our panel, and I'm curious your take on this, is like, should we be correcting misinformation? Should we be debunking posts that are on social media? Say some post has like millions of views. Should we
Mm.
engage with that to correct it? Or is that something that would be seen as unprofessional, and maybe pose like a negative or cast a negative light on the topic? Is that
I
something that
don't
we should
think
be doing?
I think we should because like now with TikTok, everyone's doing it. They literally have like really good tools for doing that, like the stitch and the duet. I've been looking at Food Science Babes posts and like she's always been into this, but like I feel like she's really like grown into a whole new entered a whole new era with her TikTok videos. Um, but yeah, I think we need to, because if something has millions of views, firstly, um, there are like there's so much criticism on the internet, and so much of it is about like stuff that's really stupid. Like it will just be, oh, like her face is usually it's against women as well, like appearance-based criticism, like her face is ugly, she's fat, whatever. Um, and so if we're criticizing them on the science, like it's not really adding to the criticism much that they're getting. Like it's nowhere near the most toxic form of criticism. And yeah, I think we do have a duty to correct the misinformation. So I don't know what the downside is to it. Um, I don't know if it's, yeah, I think if you are correcting someone who has a much smaller following than you, then I think it's a bit different because it can be seen as punching down, which is always a problem. But if it's something that has like millions of views and millions of people are believing the content and billions of people have seen the original content, then yeah, like a factual correction is really like there's not much. I don't know what the downside is.
Hey, you guys in the audience, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, let me know in the chat. Also, if you have further questions to ask Michelle, type them in the chat and I'll ask your questions. Yeah. Yeah. And now the other question that I have is for I guess companies. So something that I would like to see more brands in the cosmetics industry do, especially the larger players, is to have science communication as part of their outreach efforts to put more money into science communication. But for brands, what are some of the ways that they can start effectively engaging in science communication to try to get the right kind of information out there? Say, like, if it's a company like L'Oreal, they've got really
Mm,
good scientists on their staff. How can
yeah.
they get involved to start correcting the information? And, like, I would imagine that it would be challenging for a player like them because a lot of people would probably have this idea that, as a lot of people do, they're a larger brand and they're just killing their consumers. So yeah, what are your thoughts for that? And for clarity, they're not. That's just a conspiracy theory.
I think the main thing they can do is get their marketing department to talk to and listen to their science department because honestly, like L'Oreal, like they're a big brand and they do like obviously they're not killing people, but some of the educators and communications I've had, like marketing PR, like press releases and stuff I've had from very large brands are just full of misinformation. And they have the resources. I think it is like a coordination thing. I think once a company gets large enough, then it gets harder to communicate between departments, and no one knows like who to talk to for a particular thing. And I think if they cleaned that up internally, that would go a long way towards not like shooting themselves in the foot like 10 years down the track. Like I think with a lot of the big brands who are currently starting to get into clean beauty and sell on that basis, they are shooting themselves in the foot long term, even if they're getting gains short term. With a smaller brand, I think it is just like hire a scientist or like consult with a scientist and check what's going on, or even better, a science communicator, because I mean, the level of science in cosmetics is not super, super complicated. It's not like you're trying to explain, I don't know, immunology or something. Um, so yeah, I think they just need to talk to the right people and like get their get their stuff looked over. Yeah, it really annoys me when a big brand puts out misinformation because they have all of the resources in the world to do better and yet they don't. Like it would be such a small addition to their marketing budget. It would be like 1% max extra that they would do. And yet they still don't. And it really, really frustrates me.
And then once they've gone down that path of, like, for example, collaborating with the EWG or labeling
Mm,
their products as clean, if they were to decide to take this approach on, like, how do they kind of backpedal out of where they've placed themselves?
That's a good question because it's it's hard. Like I think once you've kind of done that, you need to like yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they've shot themselves in the foot in many, many ways, and that is one of the ways. It's really hard to backpedal that sort of thing. But I think it can be done. I don't know if a big brand like them can really do it because it's hard for them to say, "Oh, we made a mistake." But like a smaller brand, you might remember when Icky List posted their clean beauty video, and
Was it the paraben one?
everyone, yeah, and everyone just like sledged them because like they're meant to be a science-based brand, and this was just like complete BS. They actually responded really well. Like they, I don't know about you, but they emailed. Like I think I commented on your post maybe. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
just literally like what, like 3 words, like this is disappointing or something. And then they actually went off and emailed me an apology saying like how they would change. And I was like, wow, that is like that's one of the best um responses I've had from a brand to something like that.
They also emailed me as
So
well. And so I took the video
yeah.
down.
Yeah, like it sounded like from the email, it sounded like they were going to change, right? Like it actually like I don't know, I read it and I was like, wow, that actually made me feel a lot better and I feel like I trust the brand again. Um so I think yeah, again, better communication between the science and the PR departments, like the science people correct them, the PR people write the email to people trying to make everything better.
And we had a few comments. The first one was from Connor, who says, I agree, quote unquote, punching down is one potential risk, but I think another that I believe was discussed on the panel is the risk of increasing the potential audience of the misinformation. Does that
Mm.
engagement from a high profile account increase the chance of someone impressionable being exposed to the misinformation without necessarily having the benefit of seeing/hearing the rebuttal?
I think you just have to be careful with the rebuttal. So yeah, one of the things you kind of end up doing, or at least I end up doing, is I think of all the counter arguments. I prepare. I'm very prepared before I try to rebut. Like I try to cover all as many bases as I can, as quickly as I can, as clearly as I can. I think there's also just understanding the medium, like understanding how people are going to come across the information. So in a TikTok video, for example, they will watch the first part before the second part, and your rebuttal's probably in the second part. So you want to make sure the first part is very clearly wrong. So I think I've only ever done like one or two. And so I just put a sticker on there saying misinformation alert over the first half. On an Instagram post, like you have to know that people are going to read downwards. So that's why I have the myth and truth on the same image, for example. Like you cannot miss the fact that the first thing is a myth and it says myth before it. Um, I think there was some research that was very well publicized, which was saying that if you put the myth before the truth, people will go away thinking about the myth. But then there was later research that found that that wasn't true, or that wasn't always the case. Like if you worded it carefully, it was fine. So yeah, I think it is just think about how the person's going to read the information. Make sure it is impossible for them to see it and think that the first thing, the myth part, is true.
The next comment was from Day Daya. Tell me if I've butchered it, Kat. The question was, what do you think is the best way to combat harmful trends that are quickly circulating on Twitter or TikTok? Having specialists on these platforms to debunk them helps, but the blips of anecdotal results seem to be taken immediately as facts, whilst the science seems to be less attention grabbing or disappointing to the hopes for quick DIY that sorts all their issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of dermatologists on social media are doing well with that. I think usually just highlight the case for not doing it. Um, I mean, everyone, when they're about to do a DIY, it's just a risk benefit analysis, really. So if you highlight what the risks are, then like the benefits won't look as good. Like, So, for example, putting lemon juice on your face, a lot of people say it fades their pigmentation amazingly. Then you just go, this is an example where it didn't do it and what can go wrong. So yeah, show what can go wrong. And the other thing is also show them what they can do instead, so that it's more actionable as well. I think people like the DIYs because they're so actionable. Um, if if people go away going like not knowing what they can do, then they're just going to find another DIY.
Uh, Another question from Julia. Do you ever worry about the misinformation or fear mongering in your comment section misleading your audience? Do you ever delete comments? I certainly worry about that. I don't
Mm,
delete comments. Sometimes I will restrict people because I want to make sure that I can see their comments and then respond and not let their comment just sit as the last comment so that I can
mm.
respond at my own time. Uh, I certainly worry about it. What do you think?
I completely agree with you. Yeah, I've restricted certain people who always post misinformation, and yeah, so you want to so I don't think deleting comments looks good because if people saw the original comment, then they'll be like, why are they deleting it without responding to it? They must not have a response. When in reality, it's like, it's because it's 2 a.m. and you're in Australia and they're in the US. They've just woken up and they have all the time in the world to argue with you, and you're about to die and your brain has stopped working. So yeah, I completely agree with filtering comments. I do this on my blog as well. So every comment on my blog is filtered unless um, I think it's like unless you've commented before and I approved it. So that way I have time to, post the comment with the rebuttal next to it. So yeah, I guess it's the same thing. Like, um, yeah, if people are coming across the misinformation without the rebuttal attached to it, then it definitely spreads misinformation. Um, yeah, so I rarely delete comments as well. It is usually just filtering and trying to come up with a reply as quickly as possible. And conveniently, like there are a lot of people who know what's going on now. So a lot of them, like the bigger your audience gets, the more people know, like the more people will jump in and respond for you, which I found has been really helpful as well. So yeah, if you do see that in someone's comment section, don't be afraid to respond if you know the answer, because it does help combat that misinformation. And like it might actually be a larger platform than you yourself have, which is yeah, we can also use this to our advantage, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's extremely helpful to me when other science communicators in the cosmetic space or just like industry people just respond to these comments because it's really exhausting to, especially if you have like a really um I guess a post with a lot of comments that and you have to
Mm,
respond to each of the comments. It takes so much time. So it's very, very helpful when other people chime in. We had another question, which was Bijou. Is that how you say it? Maybe like sound it out for me in the comments and then I'll get it right the next time. But the question was how to deal with conflicts of interests. Example,
mm,
people like Paula. Oh, I don't even know how to say her last name. Bagwan. You probably know Paula, who started out trying to inform people about the questionable practices in the beauty industry, but then go on to have a product line of their own to sell. And I guess this also, like, products are like, if you have a line to sell, that's obviously like a conflict of
mm,
interest. But then there's also like, if you have this is really challenging. Science communication
mm,
takes so much time on social media,
mm-hmm,
but then people expect us not to take sponsorships
mm,
because then they see that as a conflict of interest. But then how are we supposed to fund what we're doing? I know you, for example, do ads,
mm, mm-hmm,
and I totally respect that as long as you
mm,
can, I guess, not bend to the whim of the brand that you're working with.
mm.
But how do you manage those conflicts of interests, especially for I'm sorry,
Sponsorships,
especially for
yeah.
people that are like commenting.
uh,
Like I get a lot of
mm.
comments of people being like, "Oh, you're bought and paid for by the
Oh, yeah.
big parabens or whatever." Anyways, what do you think?
So I can't really speak for like how I would do it if I was in Paula's position, because I think that is such a difficult position. Like it would be so difficult to try to stay objective. But what's worked for me personally is not needing the money. So like I guess like back when I was doing my blog part time and I was still working full time, I never felt that pressure. And again, this is not something that everyone can do. I realize I've been incredibly privileged to always have had like financial backup. I've never needed that money, and that's just like um realistically that's not going to be the case for everyone. But I've personally never needed the money, so I could always walk away. And I think that's what some of my other blogger friends who aren't as scientific, but like they also have a lot of integrity. They're just like, make sure you can always walk away. The other thing, if you are working with a brand, it's really good to be upfront about um, what you will and won't do. And as I guess as people have like understood what I'm doing a lot more, that's been a lot easier. A lot of brands are very happy for me to do whatever I want. And then like honestly, I think a lot of people think that brands have a lot more say in your content than they actually do. It's very rare that I get feedback from brands saying to change something completely. Usually it's something like, you got the price of the product wrong. Can you just change that from $29 to $23? Yeah. So I guess now that I'm not working full time anymore, I still have it as a backup because yeah, I feel a lot more secure with that. But now I have enough sponsorships coming in that I only take about like 5% of what's coming in. So in that case, again, like I don't feel the pressure to say yes. And for me personally, that's very helpful, I think, in reducing that conflict of interest. Um, the other thing when I'm choosing content, one of my guiding principles is if I accept the sponsorship, the content has to be something where even if the follower has zero way of purchasing the product, like, or that product is completely wrong for them, they will still walk away with something useful out of that piece of content. So like it has to be educational in some way that doesn't just promote the brand. And so for me personally, like having all of these little like systems in place, I think allows me to be objective. I don't know. I don't think anyone is ever completely objective, even when there's zero money involved. Like there are so many cognitive biases. Like if we see red, we get hungrier. It's like straight up stuff like that. So I think it's impossible to be completely objective. But I think, yeah, trying to have like reduce the conflict of interest by having other interests, I guess, is I don't know my way of approaching it.
I think it's really challenging because like as you are like debunking misinformation, especially, or maybe not especially, but I find that a lot of people in the industry want to support that because it's something that we haven't done very effectively. Science communicators, again, like it's good to get paid for your work just like any other job that you're doing and to make it viable. I find it frustrating, not that I take very much sponsorship myself. I am able to fund my work through consultation. I have done some ads on my podcast, but as soon as I've taken like $1,000 as like an advertisement for my podcast, then I'm seen as like this shill. It's frustrating to me because these people don't question other influencers who get money from like, I don't know, like say like the
Detox
EWG.
teas.
Yeah, or like the EWG gets funded by the organic lobby, but
Mm.
like I guess the organic lobby is seen as like pure or something. I don't really know where the disconnect is.
I think
How do you
I
handle
think they
things
just
like
have a
this?
I think they just have like a less smart audience. I think it's one of the I think it's honestly just or like a less informed audience, I guess. I guess it is just one of the facts of life is that yeah, people who follow someone who promotes detox teas despite everything on the internet that they could find, like they have a self-selected audience and we have a self-selected audience. Our audience is going to be more informed. um yeah, our audience is going to be more informed, so we're always going to get a bit more criticism. um I think honestly the best way is just transparency. I'm still trying to work on getting more comfortable with transparency because I don't know, I'm just old, but I feel like uncomfortable discussing this sort of thing. And discussing it can kind of jeopardize future sponsorships as well. Like, if a brand has a choice to sponsor like a tummy tea person, versus you, and the tummy tea person is just going to do everything, agree to everything, and like never like keep everything completely confidential and hide disclosure and stuff like that, versus you, and you're going to be upfront and like show everything, then like it's very easy for the brand to choose the tummy tea person, and that actually just perpetuates that version of things. So I think, yeah, it's tricky because we always want to encourage brands to work with science-based influencers who aren't promoting harmful pseudoscience. But at the same time, we do kind of need to show the audience like the reasons for what taking particular sponsorships, because yeah, like on the face of it, if you don't know all the background behind the scenes, like I think I need to talk more about how I only take 5% of sponsorships maximum. Probably way less than that actually. There's lots of sponsorships that I just like delete straight away because I don't like that thing just has zero interest for me. Yeah, I think maybe it is just a matter of more transparency.
um Oh, Bijou's had an additional point to make from the initial question about Paula saying that from a consumer perspective, it comes across as fear-mongering and poo-pooing of the competition. But does that mean that she's wrong? Uh, I guess we didn't really. I should have asked the whole question.
Mm.
I don't know if you want to comment on that.
um, I don't know. I think if you have like if you just present, oh, I think it can come across that way, um, as a brand. But I think if you have enough stuff to back you up, like if you have facts, if you have data, and if you interpret it correctly, then it doesn't come across that way. So someone who does this really well, annoyingly, is Wendy Uriel, of Umair, who, I
Oh,
think you may remember as like
yes.
the what was she fearmonger? She fearmongers about bloody everything.
Well, she said that
Um,
broccoli seed oil was going to help with melanoma. I remember that.
she also said hyaluronic acid will kill your cells or something, and
Oh.
ascorbic acid, like vitamin C, will kill your cells. She has a long pedigree of things she's been yeah, completely BSing about. But people don't doubt her because she presents data, even if that data is completely wrong and completely misinterpreted. And yeah, people don't go, oh, she's just trying to poo-poo the competition until someone shows the opposite side. So I think, yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, showing data, even if it's incorrect, that will make people believe that you're not just shilling for your brand. Obviously, morally and ethically, we should only show like the real situation, but as like a cognitive bias, people, when people see data, they will believe you, and they'll believe you're being more objective.
I guess, do you have any other recommendations that you would make for people who are interested in getting into science communication, or people who are currently science communicating and they want to maybe do a better job? I guess what I would say would be, when in doubt, cut it out if you're not sure. Uh, and if you are ever incorrect in something, maybe publicly correct the information. I feel
Hmm.
like that looks really good when I see people do that. It's okay to be wrong as long as you correct yourself and let people know, I would say. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. General advice, I think try to have like, I think empathy is really underrated when it comes to science communication. Like everyone thinks it's just about being right and having all the facts and communicating the facts well. But I think part of that is just understanding where where people who have these myths in their minds come from, like understand their perspectives and their concerns. Because like clean beauty, for example, We all know it's BS, but in reality, we all want the same thing. We want to be using products that are safe and effective. And I think having that sort of common ground and appealing to that common ground and showing why clean beauty doesn't help address that goes a long way towards combating it. Because, yeah, I think most people have good intentions. Most people like want the same thing. And if, as science communicators, we address the root of the issue and we have enough empathy to see that's the root of the issue, then I think that works a lot better than if you just like if you argue against the wrong point. So one thing that I really hate, that I see a lot is when people say, "Oh, is this apple organic or something?" And then some scientist smartass will come in and say, "It's carbon based, so of course it's organic." But it's like that doesn't help. um, yeah, so I think, yeah, understanding where people come from and actually addressing what their concerns are is probably my main piece of advice.
I guess something that I would maybe add to that in the comment section, because you might get trolled. Unfortunately, as a
Mm.
science communicator, that does happen. It's just, I guess, uh, something that you have to deal with, and you have to get thicker skin as your platform grows, unfortunately. But despite comments like that, I would always try to stay positive in your responses, never like stoop. Always be polite. If people want to stoop, whatever, but don't do that yourself. Stay factual. And yeah, I've seen some like name calling and things like that from Scicommers to people who are commenting, and I just don't see that as very productive. And it doesn't look very good on the original poster. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we've been talking for 52 minutes. Oh, I'll go ahead and ask. Bijou, be quick. If you have something to ask. Oh, I'm not gonna ask that. um, okay. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Um, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us for this conversation. So I'm going to publish the audio on our YouTube channel. I'll probably, because it's at night, it's late at night here in Canada, and so I'm gonna eat dinner after this. Process the video, but it'll be published on the YouTube channel tomorrow morning EST. So if you missed any part of this conversation, then come back tomorrow in the webinar chat and you'll see it. I guess before we go though, do you have anything we missed that you'd want to leave our listeners with, or any final take homes or anything like that?
I guess the only thing is like if you want to get into science communication, just like start. Like if you've always been thinking about starting an Instagram account or like a blog or something, just do it. Um, I guess that was my main barrier for like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm always really slow at doing things. Like I was thinking about doing a blog for 2 years before I started a blog, and then I regretted not starting earlier. Um, I was going to start a YouTube channel in 2014, and it took me like an extra 3 years because I just never started. So I think just start and don't worry. Like with the first few posts, you always like expect yourself to be perfect. You're like, this is super important. But the thing is, when you start, like there's no one following you. So like it's fine to like mess up and make mistakes. And then as you're doing stuff, you get better. So don't put all this perfectionist pressure on yourself. Just start doing it and you'll get better. And yeah, just start doing it.
Yeah, and like maybe I'll also add to that two things that like I find that a lot of people, and myself included, feel this like imposter syndrome. That like, oh, who am
Oh,
I to
me
say this
too.
when there's so many
Happens all the
people who are so
time.
much smarter than me, and they should be saying this, but they're not. So, like try to like put that at the back of your mind. And that imposter syndrome I think is good because Anka said this to me in a chat that I think maybe you are a part of. But it's like staves away the Dunning-Kruger effect, so you could be critical of what
Yeah.
you're posting.
I think I
um,
wrote this on Twitter, something very similar on Twitter. I think we have this we think the same in this respect. Yeah, like you're self-critical enough that your information ends up being better. Yeah. I've actually found that like in general, women science communicators put out better quality information. They're like wrong a lot less. Um, yeah. And I
Interesting.
think it is just, yeah, that self-criticism, which is great for your content, but probably not great for your mental health.
And the other thing that I would say is, especially as like if you're like a student, for example, and you're interested in getting experience for the industry, experience in skincare. This is something that I was encouraged to when I was still in undergrad. My professor encouraged me to start a blog to gain experience in science writing, and boy, am I glad I did. It was an invaluable thing. I learned so much, and I gained a lot of experience to put on my resume. I mean, I'm self-employed now, but I would I would suggest, like, if you're, especially right now during the pandemic where probably opportunities are limited if you can't leave your house. Well, here's a great opportunity for you if this is something that you're interested in to build experience. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I started my blog as well. When I was doing my PhD, I wanted to get into science communication, and they were always like, "Oh yeah, you want to start a blog so that it can be your portfolio." This was back in 2011 again, so I think now it's not necessarily just a blog. It can be an Instagram account, YouTube channel, TikTok, whatever. Yeah, so it helps you build a portfolio, and like even if it doesn't take off, it'll look good on your resume. Actually, my science education job, one of the reasons I got taken on and promoted very early on was because I had a blog, and my boss was like, "Oh yeah, I like that you have this entrepreneurial spirit." Um, so yeah, like it can be useful. Like at the end of your resume, you know how they always have that bit where you have to write your personal interests and you have to put like I don't know, learning languages or travel or whatever. Yeah, you can put in yeah, it can be part of that, and you don't know what help that can be.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of our audience for joining in. If you have any suggestions for next month's, I think I might know the topic, but perhaps you have a suggestion. If not next month, maybe the month after that. Leave it in the webinar chat and then I'll take it up for consideration. I'm currently trying to figure out how to do, I would like to host a careers night. I know the SES did one, but I think they had some tech issues. I think Discord would be a really good platform because we can host different rooms. So stay tuned. I'm working on that. I've already got 2 ingredient suppliers that have agreed to come on for a careers night. If anyone who's listening to this is from an ingredient supplier or larger brand and would like to get involved, then reach out to me. But, anyways, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Michelle. And I hope you guys have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day and night or morning, wherever you are.
Thank you. It was always, as always, lovely to chat to you, Jen.
Likewise.